Okay. Hello, everyone. You're very welcome today to the third in our series of online talks to coincide with Cartoon Saloon's My Father's Dragon, the exhibition, which runs here at the Butler Gallery until January 29th. I'm Anna O'Sullivan, the director of the Butler Gallery and the curator of the exhibition. I worked alongside Stephen McNamara of Rosa Design Studio, who did a wonderful job on the exhibition design. For those of you who can, I'd encourage you to come visit the exhibition, and for those who cannot, we will have installation images on our website in due course for you to check out. Today's talk is entitled Creating Imaginary Worlds and will run for 1 hour. We are delighted to have art director Áine McGuinness, who led a team of concept artists, location designers, painters, and character designers to create the immersive feel of My Father's Dragon, from the Dust Bowl to Nevergreen City to Wild Island. Áine is joined by assistant art director Emilie Bach and lead production designer Rosa Ballester Cabo. The conversation will be led by studio manager Anne Mulrooney, who will be discussing the visual inspirations for the film and the roles of color, pattern, and light in the storytelling. You, the audience, may post questions in the Q&A throughout, and hopefully we'll have time to pose some of those questions to the speakers at the end of the talk when I will dip back in. But before we kick off, and most importantly, may we extend our grateful thanks to Animation SkillNet for funding this talk series. So I'll join you again probably about 1:45 for some questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Hey, everybody. Really glad you could join us again today for this conversation. And I'm going to kick off by coming to art director Áine first. Áine, I wonder, would you start by telling us a bit about how you ended up in Cartoon Saloon as an art director, and then maybe tell us a bit about your role in the film?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I've been working in animation for over 15 years now. 7 of those have been with the Cartoon Saloon. I studied in Dún Laoghaire, IADT, graduated from there in 2007 and started my career mostly as a character animator. So I was working on a lot of kind of TV shows and hopping around different studios in Dublin for quite a while. But there came a certain period where I'd been doing that for quite a long time and decided it was time for a change. So I went freelance for a couple of years, and within that period of 2 years, I kind of tried a lot of different, different areas of animation. So background design, concept design, I was doing children's illustration, and I also started a little bit of freelance with the Cartoon Saloon. So I did some ink and paint, some cleanup, some animation as well. So I was kind of trying my hand at a few different things and learning new software and stuff like that. And then the Cartoon Saloon were hiring for the breadwinner. So I applied as a background painter and ended up getting a job as a posing artist on the breadwinner. So key poses for animation. I moved down to the Cartoon Saloon for what I thought was 8 months, and that was 7 years ago, and I haven't left. I started on the breadwinner, and kind of then, like, over the years, kind of got more and more into kind of concept design and development work. I kind of worked as a character designer, prop designer as well, and background. So I was kind of in that period of time, I was kind of getting a broad overview of the whole kind of animation pipeline. But definitely kind of focusing a little bit more on development and concept design, which is kind of how I got to here. Like, I always saw myself as a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none, and kind of thought that was a negative thing. But, in hindsight, it's quite a positive thing, because I was really getting a broad oversight of overview of how a film is made and how a TV show is made. So that sort of led me to where I am now, I guess.
And can you tell us a little bit about the role of art director? What does that mean in an animated film?
The art director will kind of work closely with the director and develop the visual style of the film. So that, starts at the kind of concept stage, trying out different designs and different approaches for treatment of backgrounds and stuff like that. And then you're responsible for, establishing that style and then maintaining it consistently through the production from the beginning to the end, and communicating that to the team. So coming up with style guides, and we worked with color, with design, so across all areas of everything visual, basically. But always kind of keeping in mind whatever we do is always to support the story. So story is key, and then all the work that we're doing visually is to support that and enhance that.
Cool. I have this memory of we were picking a color for the studio walls, and Nora, who is directing My Father's Dragon, suggested that you'd be a good person to make the call on it, given your skill set. So you're actually in a room that we painted the blue as recommended by the art direction department of My Father's Dragon.
I'd forgotten about that. I'm actually sitting in the room where Nora worked mostly on My Father's Dragon, so it's quite nice to be back here.
Cool. Thanks, Sonia. We'll move to Emilie now and ask you, I'm always fascinated by how people ended up working in Cartoon Saloon, particularly when they come from far-flung parts of the world. So Emilie, you might tell us a little bit about your journey.
Sure. So I actually started initially studying fashion. So I took a bachelor in fashion design, and then throughout those 3 years, I just fell in love with animation, and I chose to change what I wanted to do. So I went to the animation workshop in Denmark, where I'm from as well, and did that for 3.5 years. And then I kind of knew already at school that Cartoon Saloon was one of those top places that I wanted to go to, just because I really I love the stuff that has been done before I joined as well. And I studied there, and then I got a mentor at the school who I interned with in Thailand, Todd Paulson, who's also an old salooner and a good friend of the studio. So I worked with him in Thailand, and then when I graduated, there was a position open for final line on Wolfwalkers, which is it's like half of the background department. So we did the line art for the movie. So I applied for that job and got in. So I actually went here straight out of school. And then I also just got a contract of few months, and then I never left. So that's almost 4 years ago now. So after doing Wolfwalkers, I got the position to do scene illustration, location design for My Father's Dragon. And then as we moved into production, I got the job as assistant art director on there. So.
And how does assistant art director differ from art director in responsibilities and in duties?
Yeah, how does it differ? It's like Anya's the one making the calls, and I try to help make sure that all those decisions are being followed through. And we also divided and conquered a little bit in some areas. So there were some things where I had a little bit more freedom, or I had it because Anya was also very busy, so I actually got to do a little bit of design and a little bit of painting as well, which was really nice.
One of the things that we've talked about in this talk series previously is that the film was produced throughout lockdown. So making sure that the design is consistent throughout the film must have been a bit of a challenge when everybody is working in such spread out, disparate ways, working from home.
Oh, certainly. But I mean, in a way, we also just found a really good system. And I mean, I spend a lot of time making PowerPoints and then making little presentations for the different teams talking about those PowerPoints. So I would chat to Anya about specifics, and they would make a call and say this is how the style is, and this is not on style. And then I would try to dissect what that meant so that we could replicate it in different instances, basically.
That was a pretty key role, I would imagine.
I also, I think a lot of the time during production I spent doing color keys, which is also not necessarily something that is, you know, tied to this role specifically, but also I think the roles they'll always be formed by the people who take them, you know. So in my instance, I was keen on getting to do color keys. So that was something that, you know, was very much like catering specifically to the background department. I'd say that's the department that I had the most influence on. Yeah, so a lot of the time was doing like helping Anya with the kickoffs for the different sequences in the background department, and then doing specific color keys for them. So
I'm going to come back to you in a little while to ask you more about color keys, but first I want to go and say hello to Rosa and ask you the same question about how you ended
Hi.
up working for Cartoon Saloon.
Okay, can you hear me well?
Perfectly.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm Rosa Ballester. I'm from Valencia, Spain, and I've been working like Anya at the Cartoon Saloon, well, in animation for 15 years, and 4 of them in Spain, and then 11 in Cartoon Saloon. So yeah, never left. So yeah, I studied fine arts. So it was very, very traditional, you know, sculpture, painting, and all that. And then I finished and I had nothing to do. Like, where do I go with this degree? So I did like this master in graphic design and Flash. I don't know. It was like a mix of everything. Like, I'm sure something will come out from this. And it did. I started doing this internship in a graphic design studio. And a friend of mine said, "Oh, there's this animation studio in Valencia where they need people." And I'm like, "Animation? What? You can do that?" So, and she said, "Yeah, it's a job." So I went there and I stayed there 4 years, and I did a little bit of everything. Like, I don't know, everything you can think of. So I think that helped me to just, you know, control a little bit of every stage in animation. And I think that's good. It's good to know a little bit of everything, so then you know what everybody needs, you know. That makes sense. So and yeah, and a friend of mine, Santi, I think you might know him. He was working in Cartoon Saloon, and he told me that they needed storyboard artists. And this is a secret, but I had never done a storyboard. So I applied. I did an amazing test, and they got me. Sorry. And so I had to learn to do storyboards until I got to go Kenny. And yeah, so I spent, I don't know if I should say this, but yeah. Okay, anyways, I said it. So I spent there 8 months doing storyboards, and then they needed background artists for Moon Man. I don't know if you all remember. I don't know if you were there, but Moon Man, yeah. So I was doing backgrounds there, and then little by little, I ended up doing character design and posing for Song of the Sea. And suddenly, I don't know how, I started in concept art, and I've been there for many years, and I couldn't be happier because it's the best in the world. And yeah, and by accident, I started on My Father's Dragon. I mean, all my life has been little accident thingies. You know, I haven't forced anything. I'm like, okay, I'll just go here. Okay, you know, like I get suggestions, and I'm like, okay, I'll do that. This is a very bad like advice,
I
but
don't think it
I think you
is.
should just follow what you really want and not just flow with life like me. But, I mean, yeah. So yeah. So I started doing some concept art for My Father's Dragon, along with another other concept artists, which were super talented. But I guess Nora kind of liked what I was doing, so she kept asking for more. Like, can you do this character, and can you do another one? And one day I'm like, I have to do this curriculum thing. What should I write about my role on My Father's Dragon? And Nora said, "Oh, you're the production designer." And I'm like, okay, I didn't know that. So by accident, I ended up, I know it's super, it's the truth. So I wasn't asked to be the production designer. I was just, yeah, it just happened. So yeah.
I think it's
That's
really
that's my life, basically.
I think it's really interesting to hear that you studied fine art first, because I
Yes.
know I've seen your early drawings in the art of My Father's Dragon, the book behind the making of the film, and the quality of them is beautiful. I mean, they come across like prints or drawings in their own right, and there's a gorgeous sense of pattern and color in them. So yeah, really interesting that that's the route that you came through.
Yeah, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Well,
I mean, for real. I would go straight for animation or illustration. I wouldn't do classical fine art. I wouldn't. At least I wouldn't spend years there. I'm sorry, but yeah, no.
well, I'm going to argue that your position now is a testament to the path that you came through. And I also studied fine art, so I think it's a legitimate enough route into working in animation. Yeah,
but there are other shortcuts. There are shortcuts to get here.
For sure, but you learn less.
Yeah, that's true.
I do think that fine art as a study, a subject of study, helps you to be a problem solver, and I think being a problem solver is always valuable, but whatever you end up doing. I did want to come back, Emilie, and ask you about color keys. And I know, Áine, you had mentioned color keys when we were chatting previously. And I just wonder, can you explain what a color key is and what it does?
Yes, I can. I certainly can. So when we plan out what a movie looks like in terms of visual color progression, one of the first things that are done is like a color script, which is not super specific to a certain scene, but it's almost like taking every moment of the movie and putting rough colors to that. So that was done before I got this position. So I got to, I think I did like one sheet or something, like very few of those. And like that's also something where there's like several hands on to try and figure out, how do we make the progression as nice as possible. So it's like, posing questions and making suggestions, and then that gets molded into something where we're like, this is kind of the color progression we need in order to tell this story, because it is important to think about this stuff. Otherwise you end up with a movie where everything feels maybe kind of samey, and you want to make sure that the emotional beats are supported by strong color choices, especially in a movie like this where we have like a lot of different locations and a lot of different moods, and you want to really support that there. So that's the first thing that happens. And then as you move into production, you have to get more and more specific about every decision that you make. So that includes the color. So what I would do is whenever we had a new like story moment, like a new sequence in the movie, we had like a certain amount of layouts that had already been done. So let's say a sequence had like 30 different layouts or 20 layouts or something. Then I would look at the color script and see, okay, maybe we have 2 or 3 little thumbnails of like super rough color, and maybe they're done so long ago that we didn't even have the right character color back then, or maybe the location changed a little bit, or maybe there was another one that was added that suddenly had a similar color. So we get some information from there, we get the intention from there, but then what I would do is take those layouts and I would paint on top of those and make those into like color paintings, but still, working fairly small, working in sort of a thumbnail, but much more defined than what the color script would be. So it is really just like I get to do little like tiny paintings of every little scene. So that means that when a background artist gets that sequence, they can take hopefully any location, like any layout from there, and extract that information from those color keys that are done. So I wouldn't make a painting for every single layout, but I would make one for the most informative ones. So an establishing shot, or if there's a lot of headshots, I would do one of those as well. So, if there is like 20 layouts, I would maybe do 5, something like that. And that would give them hopefully all the information that they would need. And that just makes sure that the artist doesn't have to guess too much. And it means that when there is multiple artists working on one location or one sequence, that there will be some consistency because they're all looking at the same thing, basically. Because if not, like one artist might come up with one good solution and another one might come up with another good solution, but they don't necessarily match. And that means that will be more work for people later, because we don't really have that much time to go back and repaint stuff. So the more we can prepare an artist and the more we can give them all the tools that they need to do their job well, the better prepared we are and the smoother the whole process is going to be. So that's the color keys.
That's great. That's a really good explanation. I'm also wondering, Rosa, you're working on those very early, almost like inspirational drawings for how characters might look. It's the beginning of actually really starting to pin down how a character looks, and by extension how a character feels and expresses. And I wonder, like, what happens from those early concepts? Like, do you and Áine work together in that process? Are you producing the early concepts and then they get filtered through director to the art director, or how does it work?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think that's well, yeah, the first one. I would get like an assignment, like a new character, and Nora would brief me, and I would just go a bit crazy and do maybe a couple of days of concepts and crazy drawings, and just try to show Nora and Áine, oh, and Louise, which she was there back then. What I did, and then sometimes some designs would get picked, so I could develop more that the ones that got picked, and then that's it. They would just go to Áine and to explore more, right? Right, Áine? I think so. I think that's how it went.
Yeah, like a lot of the character designs were kind of came from Rosa's original concepts. And yeah, there'd be a kind of a process to go from Rosa's drawing to the animators. There's like an in-between stage where we collaborate quite a lot with Sandra, who was the character design model sheet supervisor, and she would kind of look at the design and say, like, me and Rosa would both tend towards quite like graphic stylized sort of designs, and then Sandra would kind of look at it and be like, yeah, it's lovely, guys, but how do they lift their arms, or how does it turn around, or how does the back of this head look? So we'd kind of troubleshoot a little bit with Sandra and kind of problem solve at that stage, I think, and then just refine the details, tweak some things before we'd bring it to Nora again. So that was kind of the process we had, I think.
That sounds
the
fun.
graphic style was a big challenge, because it's true that Áine and I were like team graphic, and then she was like, well, the rhino has to turn, and what happens to, because the rhino, for example, had like, it was like a big structure, like armor thingy, so it had to turn, and but we just did it, we just did it in like a profile. So then he had to turn. What happened to him? It was crazy. So but I think everything ended up looking pretty much like we did in the first place, right? They did. Sandra, she did a great job. She did a great job, and all the designers.
Yeah. I think one thing with the character designs that we did was like we kind of, I suppose Rosa's approach is to use like quite strong silhouettes and simple kind of geometric shapes and stuff like that, and like a very economic kind of approach to line as well. So whenever there was like a lot of detail in a character, we'd try and strip some of that back so that the animators could just focus on the performance. They're not worrying about all these little details. So we kind of took quite a simplistic approach to the design there, but a lot of problem solving with Sandra and her team to make sure that everything was functional.
I don't think that non-animators would ever kind of think that was the case, that you worried about how it would turn around, how it would look from a front perspective, having been drawn from the side. It brings it more
worry
alive.
about everything.
Like
how does it blink?
Each character would have like a really extensive model pack, like of all a lot of angles, as much angles as we could include, and then head tilts and blinks and mouth shapes, expressions, hand designs. The model packs were quite extensive, just so that all the animators are working from the same page, and the cleanup artists as well.
So you now have to explain model pack.
Model pack, so at the we had like the character design kind of stage is broken up into a few different phases, I suppose. So there's the kind of concept phase that Rosa was talking about. Then there's the kind of character design phase where we're like, we've picked the concept, now we're refining that and like really kind of honing in on how it should look. And then there's the model sheet stage, which is the more, I would say, technical kind of stage where you're doing those different angles of the character. So each character will have a sheet where it shows the character from the back, from the side, from the front. Will show head angles, tilts up and down, eye blinks, mouth shapes, expressions, sometimes extra poses. What else? Yeah, hands, feet, any kind of extra detail that's needed just to inform the artist, because similar to what Emilie was saying about the color keys, like different artists will interpret a drawing in a different way, and all the solutions are good, but we need everyone to sing from the same hymn sheet, I suppose. So having those extensive model packs kind of help guide the team, because we had a huge team on this project, so it's just making sure everyone was coming from the same place.
And again, having to do that remotely rather than being able to gather everyone together to talk these things through. Well, we gathered together just online rather than in person.
Yeah, exactly.
Rosa, can I ask you, when I was looking at your early concept drawings, there's quite a 1950s feeling to them. And I was wondering about where you took your inspiration for the film.
Well, it was a note from Nora. She wanted it to have a bit of that feel somewhere here and there, especially on the outfits and the shoes and everything. She always gave me like, check those 1950s kids, pictures from New York or whatever, and they're so inspiring, and I love all those little outfits with the boots and then the shorts that are super high waist, and all that. And yeah, that's where I it was a note really from Nora, and I loved it. So yeah.
And were there particular artists that you looked at to kind of feed your process?
Yes, my kids. No, for real, because because the way I approached the characters, especially Wild Island ones, were from a kid's point of view. So they had to look very naive, in kind of way. So my kids, I have small children, and the way they draw, or kids in general, the way they draw, it's super original and creative, because we as adults, we tend to, if you have to draw a lion, you just draw, 4 legs or whatever, and they just maybe make the tiny little legs and then 3 tails and 1,000 teeth, and I'm like, yes, that's so new. It's still a lion, but it's like another lion. So for this film, I approach each character from a kid's point of view. So I try to just think about maybe the crocodile, and just not look at any artist reference, because it was useless. Anything that was done by someone else is, a crocodile. So I had to think about, I had to think from a kid's mind. So I was like, what would a kid do? And then I would just exaggerate some areas or eliminate others. And yeah, for the crocodiles, for example, at the beginning, they were turning out like the typical Disney ones. And I'm like, no, this can't happen. So I'm like, what if it's like long, like a snake, and then it has legs? And I'm like, yes, and it worked, and it was something else. And yeah, that's the way I approached. I tried not to look at any reference, because it was going to like poison in a way my mind, So yeah.
What about the original book? I mean, that's such a much loved book, and it had its original illustrations. Did that play a big part in how you thought about it visually?
Well, I only had to make sure that Boris had like the same colors and 2 wings, and they're pretty different from the book, and Elmer is like totally different. So, but we did make sure that they were recognizable, because otherwise, people would be like, where are they? But yeah, I think that's the only thing that I would connect, that with between the book and the movie, the film. I think just the outfits really. Boris is more like, they're more similar, but Elmer is totally different. So yeah, and the animals, no, I didn't take them as reference. No. Yeah.
Did it feel like a bit of a weight given the, how popular and much loved the book is in various parts of the world?
What do you mean? Like if I had like pressure to?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, did that feel like a pressure at all?
No, not really. No, never. I should have, right? No, I do have. I had pressure between my colleagues, for them to like what I'm doing, but no, I didn't have pressure about the books, the fans. Oops. Well, it wasn't. I didn't know this book. It wasn't a famous book here in Spain, so I was, didn't think about that much.
Did you all read it beforehand as a book?
A little bit. Yeah, I mean, I got I think the first drawings were in 2012. I think it was 10 years ago.
Wow.
So that's where I got my first little PDF of the book. So yeah, and I read it then, and then that's it. I don't know about you guys, Anya and Emilia. You have to say yes. I read it.
Yeah, not completely.
What's it about? Tell us.
But there were a lot of differences, I know, between the original book. It was an inspiration for the film rather than it being a faithful retelling. So I guess that leaves a lot more scope in it.
I think we did use it for some jumping off points, like the book is full of these really lush kind of environments and kind of unusual, slightly surreal kind of locations and stuff like that. So certainly was some inspiration there, and the outfits of the characters and the colors came from there as well. So yeah, hopefully people who are nostalgic about the books are pretty happy with the adaptation. I think the storytelling is similar in terms of like the heart of it. So hopefully people connect with that.
This is
I feel like for the style as well, like those original illustrations, the way that they use texture and the way that things are kind of layered in small, almost like small vignettes, and how it's very much like almost like a little stage, like the vignette feel makes it feel like it's, you're just with the characters and whatever is around them. And we try to do something similar in the movie, but much more cinematic. So we thought a lot about almost approaching the locations and the shots as like a little stage, and lighting it as a stage, and then you can also see like both the way that Rosa designs and the way that those original illustrations in the book are very like naive in the way that they draw like vegetation and stuff like that. So we definitely used all of that to make a world that was immersive and had like halfway volume almost. We tried to build it and that with that mindset of a set, and like with the historical inspiration, we looked a lot at film noir as well as a way to approach value. Value was huge for us as well.
There was such a difference between Nevergreen City and Wild Island. Actually, I can totally see the film noir aspect of Nevergreen City. Was that a challenge, that there's two such kind of different worlds being portrayed? I will address that to Emilie or Áine.
I guess we both have kind of opinions on it. Yeah, I guess like Nevergreen and Dust Town, so at the start of the film, that's kind of set in the real world, but it's still through the eyes, like Elmer's eyes. So there's kind of things in the real world that are exaggerated to kind of support how Elmer's feeling at the time. But then when we go to Wild Island, it's purely his imagination. So the color palette we use much bolder color profiles there in Wild Island, and the vegetation and the locations become a bit more surreal, a bit more naivistic and imaginative. So it's all kind of to complement the story. Yeah, I don't know, Emilie, if you want to add to that.
Nah, I think you're covering it. Like we wanted to have a difference there. Like we were trying to pull those two apart a bit so that you did feel that now you entered an imaginary world, and we wanted the other one, even though the style is not, it's not very realistic, we wanted it to feel real, like real to Elmer, basically.
I do love that the Butler Gallery exhibition captures some of that sense, and the immersiveness in the space down there is really gorgeous. The dandelions. I don't know if they actually were dandelions. They're maybe a strange wild island plant that doesn't have a name, but they look like dandelions. Those backgrounds were just so gorgeous, and the lily pads.
Yeah, they were dandelions, giant ones.
Giant.
It was called Pika Place. Yeah.
Pika Place. That's it.
It's the little fluffy pikas there.
There are also some of those dotted around the gallery, which is really lovely.
Yeah, they're good fun.
Rosa, do you want to tell us a little bit about where you're based at the moment? Because
I'm in my house in Valencia at the moment. Well, I've been here for the last 8 years. So, but yeah, working. I'm lucky to be able to work for Cartoon Saloon from my home. Because like I said, I have little kids and I just want to be here. So thank you, Cartoon Saloon, for this. And yeah, so I've been working online for 8 years. So the pandemic was like a normal day for me. Just a normal day.
but
And,
also, I guess if you were 11 years, did you say, with Cartoon Saloon altogether? So
yeah.
you had that
I
rapport built up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I lived in Kilkenny for 2 years with a gap between the first and the second year. Yeah, and it was great. I loved it. I love Kilkenny. I love it so much. I haven't seen the exhibition. So you're talking about things and I'm like, yeah, I guess it's pretty, but I haven't seen it.
It
So
is.
yeah, but I've been coming back, several times for things. But then the pandemic came, so it's been like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. I don't know. I went back recently to see the premiere of the film, so that was fun. I hadn't seen people for ages, so it was great. Yeah, I'll come back someday.
Good. So your role is very involved in the early conceptual phase.
Yeah, you mean in the film or
in the film? Yeah, in the film.
Yeah. That's I didn't get much, just the script and briefing from Nora and Onia and Louise, and that's it. I think they just let me like do my stuff. Sometimes they would just say, do your thing, and then come back to us in 2 days. So I would do my thing, and yeah, and that always makes me so nervous, every time I'm like, send. I mean, until this day, it never goes away, people. Never goes away. I'm always so nervous. So yeah, that's how it worked. Yeah.
But then for Anya, your role very heavily involved at concept stage, but also very hands-on right through. Would that be correct?
Yeah, well, actually on this film, like typically the art director would be there from the very beginning, from the concept stage, but just the way things worked out, I actually started quite late on this production. So I started just as kind of the concept stage was finishing and we were moving into production. So it was a little bit different. That's not quite the normal way that would normally happen. So yeah, I was much more hands-on for the production side of things. But yeah, very involved in I think I would have overseen maybe like 10 different departments throughout. Wow. And like at any one time, I guess like there'd be 4 or 5 maybe ongoing at the same time. So yeah, with the concept stuff, when I arrived, a huge amount of work had already been done by Rosa and the rest of the team. Like we had quite a big team and they were all doing incredible work. So there was a huge volume of stuff that was done already, but still a lot of decisions left to be made. So that's kind of where I came in and tried to kind of pull things in one singular direction. Just working with Nora and kind of finding that sort of red thread in all the work that had been done up to that point.
So concept stage has production designer, but also location, character. What else is in there?
Location design, character design, storyboards. What else? The color script that Emilie talked about, that kind of early thumbnail stage. Yeah, and then also you'd be kind of testing, like, okay, how might we treat the backgrounds? How might we paint the backgrounds? So kind of doing what we call scene illustrations, which are like kind of like a mock still frame, I suppose, like trying to really hone in on what the final frame will look like. Yeah, so you try and kind of pin stuff like that down at that stage as well.
Can I ask you, what do you think the characteristics of a good art director are? Good art director. I suppose one of the key things is communication. So I have to deal directly with Nora and kind of find out what it is that she's looking for and what the most important things to her are. And then interpret that and communicate that to the team. So I think communication is key. And I think having empathy for your team as well, like, you know, especially geez, like during the production through lockdown, it was quite hard because, you know, normally you're, you know, working in the same room with people and you kind of can tell how they're doing and stuff like that. But during lockdown, you don't really know how people are doing. So yeah, I think kind of just being empathetic and trying to support your supervisors as much as possible. I suppose then on the more sort of artistic side of things, a good understanding of color and light and design and kind of yeah, I think one of the things that's important as well is decision making, just being able to trust your own voice, make a decision and pass that on to the team, which is, I find quite difficult, but yeah, I think that's pretty key as well, is just making clear decisions and communicating clearly to your team. You know, it's really interesting because we had Fabian, Mark and Louise, the three assistant directors, on chatting about 2 talks ago, and they all spoke about communication and empathy being central to their roles. So it sounds like they're incredibly important generally for a skill set in animation. Emilie, I'm wondering about you now. Same question. What do you think the really the strongest attributes of an assistant art director need to be?
I think one of the most important things is being really good at asking questions and not being afraid to ask the stupid questions as well. I found that was one of the biggest things for me. Like, you always assume that everybody knows what they're doing, especially if you are a little green, you know. And I just found that, you know, being around a team of people that don't, like, you know, that you have an environment where you're not afraid to speak up and say, I don't understand this, or what do you actually mean? That is like really, really huge, because I think a lot of the questions that I would ask would also like solve things a little bit faster, or, you know, preempt some problems that might come down the line. So I think that was one of the really big things that I started just doing really on purpose. Like, whenever I was in a meeting, if I was slightly confused about what anybody meant, like whatever, if Vanya said something and I was like, do you mean, like, when you say this, do you mean that, or do you mean this? Even if I knew what Anya meant, because we also started to like, you know, be able to mind read each other at the end of it. Even if I understood, if what they said was a little unclear, it was better for me to ask so that we were all clear about what we meant. So that's part of communication, but I feel like to be able to do that, you need to be able to ask stupid questions, or, you know, just anything really. So that was a very big one for me. And I think also just having a really strong sense of, you know, actually how to paint, how to make something look good, I think is important. Come up with good design solutions fast. Like, sometimes we just need to figure out something and we need to do it now. So that was also one of the things that I did. Something that I think isn't really like maybe often overlooked as a part, especially of a movie like this. There's like a huge element that is all the magic that has to be designed. I think we always design the characters, we design the worlds, but then there's all this other stuff that needs to be designed that maybe doesn't always have a slot where we do that. That was a lot of those things where we had to figure it out along the way. A huge shout out to Narissa, the effects supervisor, who was really, really incredible on this project too. And I got to work a lot with her and come up with some like design solutions. And she would take those and say like, we can do this or we can do it like that. That was also something else. Like you need to come up with something fairly fast, and also just dissect, like I said before, when Áine, like, because Áine also has a really good strong like gut sense of what is right or what will work. And then I would sort of try to dissect it basically and try to figure out what does that mean. So I think that's also important to be able to dissect how do we build that style then.
But that sounds like amazing teamwork between the two of you. I like that you became mind readers by the end. Good to know.
Yeah, Emilie was amazing at sort of, I'd kind of like mumble, sort of like, what about this? I think there's something a bit off there. And she'd kind of interpret what it was that I was trying to say. So she became the master at that.
And Rosa, same question to you about the attributes of production designer. What do you think the key strengths needed are?
The production designer is kind of responsible of the visual appearance of the film, because the production designer not only does character design, there's also background, FX design, prop design. So I did focus more on character, but I did, like the main props that were going to be used, or FX, like Nora would say, there's going to be a dragon flying in the sky. How would you imagine it? Or there's this magic happening somewhere in the film. How would you do it? So it's important to maintain the same style throughout the whole little areas of the film. There's so many things you can do, and then you have to make sure that everything is on style. And then there's another thing that you have to work really close to the director. And here I tried to hear Nora very closely, like on the because I wouldn't be next to her. I would just have this short meetings, so I would just try to maybe make sure that word that she repeats twice in the conversation means that she really wants that. So I try to like be in her mind and see what she really wanted. And because at the beginning it was mainly me and her and a couple of other people. The team is really small at the beginning, so you have to work really close to the person and see what the director wants. And like they said, you have to be, I would say that to work in animation you have to do deliver quality work on time. That's one thing. And the second thing would be like be a good person. I think that's super important, because like working with Áine and Emilie, it's so smooth. You don't have any weird things going on. It's always very, very smooth, and then super, super nice. So, hi. So yeah, so animation is, everything is super connected in every way. So if you deliver late or you deliver with low quality, then that's going to affect everything. And if you're in a bad mood, it's going to affect everyone. So yeah, just that.
And there's a couple of questions, if you don't mind me butting in here, and I think Rosa, you probably answered some of it, because the first question was directed to you, and it says, Rosa, your brilliant design language is out of this world. What are the 3 key elements you focus on when you start composing a concept, scene, illustration, image?
Oh my God, I don't have any steps I follow, really.
More instinctive, is it? Yeah.
I remember when I had to go in the middle of the production of My Father's Dragon. I had to go to Kilkenny and kind of explain my process, and it was so hard because for me it was like very like a natural thing. I would just and then I think Áine, you had to write poor thing. you had to kind of make like a document about my, you know, my process or something, right? I think you can answer this more than me. This is so embarrassing, but it's true.
Yeah. So Emilia dissects what I'm saying, and then I dissect what you're saying. No, I think we like, yeah, we kind of broke your process down into a few kind of fundamental principles, but I think the common thing across characters and locations is like, you'll always start an image with just a few simple lines to describe like a composition or something like that, and then build up the image from there with kind of geometric shapes and simple kind of line work and color as well. So it's there's always like a strong silhouette and quite simple shapes and clear, like your artwork is always quite clear and clean, I think, in a very kind of illustrative way. So yeah, I think strong silhouettes, simple geometric shapes, and an economic approach to line is what what Rosa does.
Thank you.
Seems to
Yep,
have it.
that's it.
That's a good one. That's a good answer. Dermot Nolan asks, when doing concepts and backgrounds, would you do both traditional and digital?
Is that for me?
Not
No,
to
always
examine it,
digital.
whoever wants to take that.
Well, in my case, it's been digital. It's always been digital for many, many years now. Because, well, maybe I scribble like something during the call we're having, you know, the brief I'm getting, but then it's always Photoshop. Yeah. I wish it was more traditional, but no. Yeah. Anya, Emilia.
For me, it's usually a mix. Like I'll usually start traditional and then scan it in and fiddle around with it quite a lot in Photoshop to try and refine it more. But yeah, usually like if it's characters, I'll it kind of depends on if it's characters or a location. Like if it's a kind of more of a background thing, I'll work traditionally, scan it in, work on top. Yeah, depends on what it is, but yeah, I always try and start traditional anyway. Emilie?
Yeah, same as you. I prefer to work traditional, but just like sheer speed, it's just faster to get something done for production when you work digitally. So we definitely, like, we have used a lot of traditional media in the movie, and we've done a lot of those like scan textures and stuff that we apply. But you know, for production purposes, it's just easier to work digitally, and then we, you know, work very hard to still maintain that, you know, traditional feeling, and emulate, you know, different tools with, you know, nice traditional media looking brushes and stuff like that. So
sounds good. There's another question. Pam Araujo asks, do you have any favorite sequences in which you enjoyed the most to work on, and why? Probably a hard one.
I have three. I have many, but I have three. I think I really like, I know that it's sequence 20, that doesn't tell you anything. The one where, well, Elmer is running from the street that he moved to onto the docks. I think that one is really cool because that's where we pushed for film noir the most. And I also think it is really cool because it's sort of that through the looking glass down the rabbit hole moment. That's when he goes from reality, like his reality, into his fantastical world. So it's like a very pivotal moment in the movie. And I just think that I really like that we were able to push it as much as we did with the film noir inspiration. So, and then the other ones are, I really like the mushroom path, which is that like dreadful purple brownish universe of mushrooms and rain. I just think it's really atmospheric. I like that one. And then I like we call it Lily Pad Land. It's when they just escaped from Croc River and they are in this area that look like red lily pads. And I just think the light there and the colors are really beautiful, and backgrounds really did a good job like maintaining all that. So I just think it turned out really nice.
That's great. There's a last question in from Anya Phelan, who says that she worked in the salon in the summer as an intern and absolutely loves the work on the film. Congratulations to everyone. As a student who is in their final year, I was wondering if any of you have any advice in relation to portfolio creation for roles that you guys have. You could be specific, of others not so specific, and open to anyone who'd like to answer that question. Ideas for portfolio.
Well, I think she should focus on the role she's asking for, you know, not do like, if she's asking to do backgrounds, she should add backgrounds mainly and maybe leave like the very last 2 pages for other things she's good at. And I would tell her to always put the best images at the top of the PDF or whatever she's sending, because sometimes the people who are looking at the portfolios, well, usually they're in a hurry. So if the first image doesn't like, you know, touch their heart, then they're not going to scroll down. So because sometimes I see students, like sometimes they want to do like a kind of, I'm gonna, you know, build up like a, you know, my process. I'm like, no, just show your best work on the first image. Even when you put your name on the cover, there should be something there too, you know, something to look at. So yeah, and also show the best. It doesn't, you don't have to show 50 drawings. Maybe you can just show 5, but you have to show the best of the best, because yeah, that's who you are. And if you show something that's, you know, not at the highest level that you can do, then they're gonna, I don't know how to say it, like, well, I don't know how to say it, but just show your best, the best of the best, even if it's just 5. And also put your contact there big, so people can contact you, because sometimes it's hard to find that, you know, like where should I write? So yeah, that's my advice.
Sounds good. Anyone else got anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's important for people to remember like how the volume of portfolios that the studio gets. So like, I think I was looking at portfolios for one department on My Father's Dragon, and there was like over 300 applicants, and you have, and you know, you're making a film at the same time, so you really have to go through those quite quickly. So first impressions are really important. But I always look at you know, because some people do a little bit of industry work, which is great to see that people have experience, but I'm always like really looking at their personal work and what they do on the side and what they do for fun and what they're passionate about, because that tells me more about that specific person. And yeah, just given the speed that we have to look at portfolios, just don't worry too much about like loads of text or fancy writing, or you know, it should be presented clearly, obviously, but the main thing is that we can see your image clearly. And another piece of advice, which might seem obvious, but make sure if it's a digital portfolio or like a, you know, online, make sure all your links are working correctly, because you'd be surprised at the amount of times we click on a link and it's broken. And that basically means we can't review your portfolio at all, and it's a very simple thing. So yeah, that's all from me.
All good advice. And a good way to maybe end the session, because we've come up to almost 2 o'clock. And did you have anything to add, or shall we end the session now?
No, we have a Christmas party that we need to prepare for now in Cartoon Saloon, so it's a busy day today.
We have one ourselves later too, so it's party day for everyone. Thank you all very much, Rosa, Áine, Emilie and Anne, for joining us today. Keep an eye out to the attendees to our website to further talks in January. And thank you very much for your time today. It was really interesting. I think people got a lot out of that. So thanks for your input. So I guess we'll say goodbye for now, and happy Christmas to all.
Merry Christmas.
Bye.
Bye.